Harps, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Tom. Good to see you.
Yes, you too, mate. You're looking fine as ever.
I do what I can, mate. You know, as you slide towards your twilight years, you got to pull out all the stops to try not to look too tragic.
Too tragic. I like that. Well, yeah, like I was saying before the show, it's our first catch up was in 2020 when we thought that the world could get no worse, right? At the height of the pandemic, and then now I think back, and climate change has been ticking along. The rise of AI and deep fakes are getting interesting, and prospects of a World War III. So things are looking good.
Yeah, other than that, it's bloody terrific, isn't it? Other than that, we're going swimmingly as a species and a planet. All good, all good.
I know. Do you just, I suppose on a serious note, do you ever, what helps you keep the focus on your personal missions and goals and keep kind of like the outside noise to a minimum?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think it's, okay, so I'll talk for me, not more broadly, but for me, it's important that I don't waste energy on things I can't control or affect.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of stuff that going on that I don't necessarily love, or you don't love, or the listeners don't love, that in the moment, like today, I can't change it. Doesn't mean I don't have an opinion, doesn't mean that I don't care. It doesn't mean that I won't do anything to play my part in whatever, fill in the blank. It just means that I can't turn around global warming myself today. So what can I do today? What's the best use of my time and energy and skill and talent based on how I want to be and who I want to be and who I want to be for others? So for me, it's very much about controlling my controllables, not being apathetic towards the greater good, of course, but saying, being practical and pragmatic and realistic. And so what I can do is I can make choices and create behaviors and an operating system which is reflective of my values and who I want to be and how I want to be. I can choose, how I eat and how I live and, how I personally do my bit for the planet and so on. And then I think more broadly, how can I be something that is a positive voice or a positive component of the greater good, so with my podcasts and stuff, how can I show up for others and hopefully share something that's of value to the world, without my ego and my bullshit getting in the way,
Yeah. Do you think about where we are going as a species? Like, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on technological innovation, the rise of AI and so forth. And yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because evolution, literally we've been evolving for, depending on which school you're in, but, 300,000 years we've had modern man/woman/person in inverted commas, or thereabouts, or unless you're a fundamental Christian, 6,000 years, but let's go with the 300 for the moment.
Sure.
But I mean, everything's always evolving, but it's like scientific advancement is not always advancement. Technological advancement is not like we have more stuff and know more stuff. And I think technology is brilliant. Science is brilliant. But it depends how it's used.
Yeah.
It depends who's using it. Science also made the atomic bomb and nuclear weapons and a whole lot of other horrible shit that really hasn't served us as a species. Technology is bloody brilliant because it saves lives, and there's incredible medical resources that we now have through technology and research and science and brilliant human beings. But also we have, 12-year-old kids who are addicted to, and 50-year-old kids for that matter, who are addicted to porn or to social media or to, who like, even with me, and this is ridiculous, but like I do 14 podcasts a week. And
Wow.
As you know, I'm stumbling I have 2 shows and I do them daily, right? And I'm stumbling towards the finish line of my PhD, and I'm constantly writing, and I'm constantly doing Zoom calls, and all of that, or a big part of that is my ability to have access to this technology, which is fucking amazing. But one of the downsides is my eyes are plummeting. My eyes are falling off that, because I'm constantly looking at screens,
Yes.
So I think with anything, it's like you can have a healthy relationship with food or a destructive relationship with food. You can have the most beautiful marriage in the world or a toxic, horrible marriage. So I don't think that, technology is good or bad. Technology is technology. Invariably, it's what humans do with all these resources that makes it good or bad. It's the application. And I look, even with AI, even with Chat GPT, there's some stuff that's some incredible applications, but maybe the downside of that is that some people will lose their jobs because copywriters and people who would write ads for various things, or even some journos and all of those things. But it's like we've never not been progressing and evolving as a species. And back in the day, like once upon a time, the wheel was mind blowing. Like, fuck, a wheel.
Yeah.
Like we can move all this. One person can move their shit because they've got a cart with 2 wheels. It would take 4 men or whatever 10 days, and it takes one person with a cart 1 day. So it's all relative to the time and the context of where we are at as a species. But, and I've never said this on a podcast, but I do worry. I do worry where we're going. And I hate saying that because I feel old when I say it. And I just worry where things will end up because, you and I live in a place where we are spoiled. We are, we are blessed. Not everyone, of course, there's a lot of people with hardship in Australia, but, I was lucky. I just happened to be born in this country. Like I didn't do anything to deserve that. I didn't, I had good parents. I didn't deserve them. I was just lucky. I didn't have a dad that beat me or a mum that screamed at me, or I didn't grow up in domestic violence. And so I'm never forgetting how fortunate I am to be where I am. And I think one of the things that, and I'll shut up after this, but keeps me grounded, Tom, is the fact that I work with lots of people who are not lucky, and that, the last 2 days, just per chance, have been really tough on Planet Me because my mum, it's Tuesday as we record this, she got put into hospital on Sunday with acute abdominal pain.
Oh, shit.
It's 83. There's, a bunch of stuff going on, and then they couldn't really resolve it. They sent her home, which they maybe shouldn't have. Then yesterday she got sent back to hospital via ambulance, same thing. And, my mum's had cancer 3 times, like at the edge of death's door 3 times. She had a heart attack in November. She crashed her car 6 weeks ago, totaled her car, broke 5 ribs. It's like my mum is, talk about high performance. Like I've worked with high performers in inverted commas, Olympians, elite athletes, high-end corporates, entertainers. My mum's a high performer for me because, she's just so fucking resilient and strong and has an amazing attitude. But back to my original point is that, I always say to Melissa, who runs my life, if I complain, punch me in the mouth because I'm the problem. I think it's really important that we need to be aware of what's going on globally, and we need to care and we need to do what we can. But today, my life is good. Today, I'm in a good situation. Today, I'm privileged. I live in a nice house in a nice place. I don't live in a war zone. I don't have to worry about whether or not I get shot or blown up today, or whether or not I can have food today. There are so many people in the world that don't have what I just have by default, So that keeps me grounded.
Yeah. It's a really interesting time, and I have to agree with you where I think fundamentally I am an optimistic, almost a delusional optimist, but I also try to cultivate that as well, even in times of hardship. And then I think about multiple forms of suffering, the kind of socioeconomic suffering where, systems have a proclivity for oppressing certain marginalized communities and so forth. And then also think about the suffering that we all experience, the suffering that comes along with being human, the existential suffering of what to do in the face of death and, isolation. The fact that no one's truly ever really going to understand what it's like to be me, and how do I come to terms with that, and so forth. And I think often about how these two are kind of coming together at such a crazy time. And, redundancy, as you mentioned before, so many people's sense of identity comes from what they do for work and how that's going to change. And then the thought of, everything else. And then I think about what you say just then, and it kind of is the only choice that we have at the moment, to just be here right now and think, well, there's only so much that I can control. It doesn't actually serve me to, perhaps I need to watch the news a little less, or I need to do things that serve me in that way, to actually create a belief system that makes me be able to move forward.
Yeah. And I think also, just like my PhD is, we'll go into it later if you want, but it's loosely around self-awareness, and self-awareness is part of self-awareness is, what's great about my life? Well, there's this, there's that, there's that, there's that, there's that. What's working? What's not working? What do I need to be grateful for? What part of the solution am I? What part of the problem am I? What are my values? How do I want to live? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up for others? And I think, when we kind of start to live more consciously rather than, I think because most of us have so much momentum in our life with stuff, with commitments, with responsibilities, with job, with people, with relationships. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a normal thing. But you can almost become a passenger in your own life.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you go, shit, it's 2 years. I've been kind of telling myself I'm going to do this thing for 2 years. I haven't done the thing. And in fact, I've told 20 others I'm going to do this thing. I'm always talking about doing this, changing that, fixing that, resolving that. And now it's 2026. And now I'm 3 years older or 2 years older or whatever it is. And so I think one of the perpetual, like when you talk about existential thinking and crisis and reality, is to go, how do I want to exist? What do I want my life to be? Is it what I want it to be? And while also being grateful and all of that, do I have a life which is reflective of how I want to be and my values and my beliefs? And am I thriving, or am I surviving and treading water? Am I the driver, or am I the passenger? What am I? Am I consciously creating my life, or am I unconsciously just a character in a story? And it's because it's so easy to just kind of operate in that Groundhog Dayness of repetition. But let me say that if in the middle of the repetition and the Groundhog Dayness, your overarching state is happiness and joy and contentment and fulfillment, then change nothing. But if on some level you go, you know what, I'm an overthinker, I'm kind of full of self-doubt, I'm not really loving stuff, I don't really feel too much joy or fulfillment, or then, and that's not judgment, that's just honesty and self-awareness, a little bit of a self-audit, then go, great. So maybe what's a thing that you could do that might swing that around a little bit? It's not about self-loathing, it's just about self-reflection and self-regulation. And, it's like I realized when I was young, when I was, 14 years old and morbidly obese and nearly 100 kilos, that I probably needed to have a certain operating system around food and exercise and lifestyle, or I was going to be a 140 kilo grown-up, and so literally at 14, that process started. And I've never had alcohol, I've never had drugs, I've never been high, or, and it's not because I'm a wowzer or because I'm an elite athlete. It's just going, well, those things will not work for me. I eat 2 meals a day, not because I'm super disciplined, or it's just because that's what works for me.
Yes.
You know, I train every day, not because I'm addicted to training, but because when I move my body every day and train every day, everything works better. My brain works better, my creativity, my mind, my relationships, you know, my energy, my emotional state, everything benefits from having a body which is hopefully, uh, according to my potential, near optimal. You know, it's like you've got one body, you can't get another one. What are you going to do with that one? You're
Yes.
going to treat it great or you're going to treat it shit, because you literally, you know, what do you eat? Like, you don't accidentally eat junk food. It's an
Yeah.
option. You don't accidentally not exercise. You know, you don't, and it's, again, you don't have to be obsessed or weird. Just go, well, there's, you know, 1,440 minutes in a day. If you move your body for 30 minutes consciously, and there's a bit of variety and a bit of progression and you're consistent, it's probably good enough. You know, that leaves
Yeah.
1,410 minutes a day where you don't have to do that. So what's your next excuse?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always, you know, there's a couple of things that really stuck out to me from our last episode. You kind of alluded to it before, this idea of, you know, saying that you want to do this thing, but then 2 or 3 years passes. I'm not sure if you remember this, mate. Last time you were saying to me, you know, if you think about 10 years, that's just a very ambiguous kind of long-term, like, who you're going to be in 10 years sort of thing, you know? Who were you 10 years ago, right? Well, I was a kid. 5 years, though. 5 years. That's like not that long ago, and yet it feels like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like now we're already over the bump of it being 5 years since we, you know, kind of last spoke. It's definitely been 3, I think, at least.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like it doesn't feel like a long time, and yet it goes like that. And it's really only double those 5 years in comparison to what it would be of each decade. And then that's your life. You know, it was that. And it was actually also the other thing you said when we caught her for a coffee, which I think is you've been working for yourself since you were 29, was it, or 27?
26.
26. Oh, okay, right there. Yeah. Yeah. So it's I think about those things actually a lot. And it puts me into this place of, it's not like I need to rush through my life, but I do need to have a certain level of intentionality, because sure, 5 years, you've got a lot more of those to go, but it's still 5 years. So, and you think about all the things that you've done, and I really want to get to your PhD, because it's interesting for me that someone who, you know, has been quite successful financially and so forth for a long time would then go back and do a PhD. I'm really excited to hear more about that. But how do you kind of balance that idea of not rushing so that you just don't, you know, get to the end of your life and go, oh shit, I never smelt the roses, but at the same time, not just letting it go by, as you say, without having some agency?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, different things work for different people too. I don't think, you know, I don't think everybody needs to have a daily to-do list and a 1, 2, 5, 10-year plan. I think some people kind of can, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, live in a Groundhog Day-ish, you know, because they're in a pretty good marriage, a pretty good job. And I think it's like, I think sometimes we think, maybe me and maybe you, I'm not sure, but I used to think, which was wrong. I was wrong, by the way. Don't have a day off. Don't eat shit. Don't drink beer. It's like, I'm a fucking robot. It's like, well, that's okay for you, Craig, but I'm not you. That doesn't work for me. I want to have a beer. I want to have 5 beers. I want to eat a pizza, you know, and of course I really did get that. But at the same time, I was so fucking focused and disciplined, and there was so much structure and that while it worked for me because I need a clearly defined operating system, and in the middle of that, believe it or not, there's, you know, I still have fun, and I still do silly shit, and I find lots of joy and lots of purpose and lots of socialization and all of that. But the way that I live for many people would be a fucking nightmare. It's like, you know, working, like you said. So I'm 59. I haven't had a job in inverted commas for 33 years. Well, that's a terrible idea for a lot of people. For me, awesome.
Yeah.
Standing on a stage talking to 1,000 people, for most people, fucking horrifying. For
Sure.
me, can't wait.
Yes.
can't wait. Like I love connecting with a room of people. I love sharing my thoughts and ideas. I love creating an experience. I love dropping some truth bombs. I love inspiring people and talking to people. Like it's my jam.
Mm.
For somebody else, it would be the worst job of all time. I get that. And so I think it's trying to figure out, you know, like for me, and I mean for me, the listener, for you, the listener, the individual, what's going to work for you? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, you and I, Tom, we could eat the same food, do the same training, have the same number of hours of sleep, create essentially the same lifestyle. We're not going to look the same, feel the same, function the same, operate the same, recover the same, have the same body composition. We're not.
Mm.
Because I don't need what you need exactly, and you don't need what I need exactly. It might be similar, but it won't be the same. And so, and this is one of the problems in 2023 is that a lot of people are selling a model. Like this is how you should eat. This is how you, this kind of training is better than that kind of training. This food, this diet is better than that diet. This nutritional philosophy is, it's all bullshit because we don't know, you know, there are certain exercise principles, nutritional principles, physiological truths, and all of that. But, you know, I wouldn't recommend anyone train exactly the way that I train because they don't have my body. And they probably don't have my goals. So, and for me, training is 30% about my body and 70% about hanging out with one of my best mates in the world every day. So it's social, it's emotional, it's psychological, it's fun, it's stress management, it's therapy, it's a bunch of things, and also it helps me stay in shape.
Yes.
You know, I'm pretty sure I didn't answer your question, but it's like, I think the idea that there is a way, or there is a way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like even the other day I was talking to somebody whose dad passed away recently, and somebody said to him, essentially, you're not grieving properly.
Oh, right.
And I went, punch that person in, not really everybody, but punch that person in the face.
Yeah.
Oh, really? There's a set protocol, is there? And if you don't follow the set protocol, then you're doing grief wrong. I mean, this is like somebody literally said to him that you are grieving, you're not grieving properly.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
I'm like, tell that person to fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, grieve how you're going to grieve. Laugh, dance, cry, have a breakdown for 2 days, get up, fall down, wipe the snot away, figure it out. You do you. And, you know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this is that, but we do live in the age of a program, and we do live in the age of, you know, confirmation bias and echo chambers, where if you don't do it like I do it, you're wrong. If you don't think like me, you're wrong. If you don't worship like me or believe like me, you're the enemy. And by the way, I'm right and you're wrong, but also I'm very open-minded.
Right.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just that little caveat towards the end there.
Well, the thing is, think about this, and I might have said this last time, but you and I are in the same call, the same conversation, but we're not in the same experience.
Right.
And I can't truly be objective about everything, maybe a few things. And the reason I can't be objective is because I have pre-existing ideas and beliefs and values and experiences, and I look through the world through the Craig window. And the Craig window is all my stuff, all my emotional and psychological stuff. And while I might have an awareness of the window, I can't eradicate the window.
Yes.
That makes sense. And so the beginning, and this is weird, but the beginning of self-awareness, Tom et al., is to recognize your lack of self-awareness. The beginning of consciousness is to realize how unconscious you are.
Yes, absolutely. And that, see, it's interesting to me, Craig, that as someone who, you know, is so interested in self-awareness and biases and so forth, have you ever been tempted at least to dabble into the psychedelic agents, shall we say? Are you interested in that field at all?
I'm really interested. I probably wouldn't do it, but that's just my personal choice. I've had a bunch of friends who have done everything from toad poison to ayahuasca to LSD, a few of the older ones, to what's the MDMA to and in fact, where I study, a guy called Professor Paul Litnitsky is doing psychedelic research. I had him on my show, and I'm very interested in it. But it's not something I want to do. But I think for a lot of people, it's probably, what do I think? Well, put it this way, for people who want to open that door in an intelligent, therapeutic way, I wouldn't be critical of them. I think also, the thing is that, like, think about all the stuff that we put in our body, and people are like, everything from chicken nuggets to water, to cigarettes, to booze, to organic vegetables, to, like, we are constantly putting it, and everything that we put in our body has a physiological consequence. Not too many of them are psychedelic.
Sure.
But, we're kind of anti-drugs in our culture, but the irony is that nearly everyone takes some kind of drug.
Yes.
But there are just drugs that are socially and morally and ethically, that drug's fine, but that drug, you're a bad person. Now, this is coming from someone who doesn't use recreational drugs ever.
Sure.
But, I think I think it's hilarious that you can go to that an 18-year-old teenager can go to the corner store and buy 100 cigarettes. I'm talking about theoretically, well, literally, buy 100 cigarettes and smoke them all in 3 days. And we know that cigarettes literally kill people, but they're also very, very profitable.
Exactly.
So let's sell that kid. That kid can do that. Obviously, let's hope kids aren't doing that, but they can. They can walk in off the street, no script. They don't have to jump through any hoops. There's, show your ID and here's your 100 cigarettes. Like, we live in that world where somebody else might go, I want to smoke a bit of dope or something, and everyone freaks the fuck out and it's a crime. I'm like, all right. I don't smoke dope, so I'm not an advocate, but
that's a great way to just deal with it.
It's fucking ridiculous. Here, have 100 cigarettes. By the way, absolutely kills people. Absolutely, we know it gives you cancer. Still legal though, still over the counter.
Yes.
All right, but a drag of dope or what? Nah, can't. All right, all right. I mean, and I'm not an advocate, and I'm not a wowser with that stuff, but I don't. Even if dope was legal, I wouldn't smoke it. But I think if you want to, you should be able to.
Yeah. But you raise a really good point there, and then I'm going to make sure that I get into this PhD because I really want to hear about it. But that whole idea of just the Craig window or the Tom window and all the baggage and associations with the word drug, because really it's just an exogenous substance as some sort of neurochemical effect.
Yeah.
But people have a really hard time seeing a potato, as the same thing. And obviously it's a spectrum in terms of the influence on the brain, but even still, if it's having an effect, it's having an effect, and it is a double standard and it is ridiculous. But Craig, this is why I emailed you, my friend. So I want to make sure.
Before you move on, one thing, also think about this. You can go to any supplement store and buy creatine monohydrate. You can buy it over the counter. It's performance enhancing. It's proven that it's a supplement that works. I don't think it's the best supplement in the world, but it definitely has an effect for about 80% of the population. It's like, by the way, strength training is performance enhancing.
Yeah.
Drinking water if you're dehydrated is performance enhancing.
Yes.
Sleep, performance enhancing. Great nutrition, performance enhancing. Like, we have these terms that we all go, oh, fuckity fuck. Oh my God, that's performance. You know what's performance enhancing? Strength.
Yeah.
Go get some. You know what else? Flexibility. You know what else? Like cognitive function, cognitive fitness. It's just, we are hysterical about things that we don't need to be hysterical about, and we just let other things slide, which I think need a lot more attention.
Yeah.
Anyway, steps down off soapbox.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. No, look, well, I want to segue into your PhD for personal reasons and for the listeners as well. I'm really interested in pursuing one myself. Funnily enough, on grief actually in the palliative care industry. But first question before we actually dive into what your PhD is all about. We live in a world now where the internet has really kind of smashed the middleman, and the universities are no longer the gatekeepers of higher education. The data seems to suggest that people are less inclined or motivated to go to university to study. So just before we get into your PhD, mate, I was actually really interested to find out why you decided to pursue this.
Yeah. So I was where I study, which is Monash University in Melbourne, specifically at the Neuroscience Neuropsych Lab, which is called Brain Park. I was asked to come and do a chat to some of the PhD students and some of the staff around the work that I did. And my job essentially helping people to help themselves, helping people to optimize their talent, potential, genetics, time, resources, all of that stuff. And a guy who was based there came to some of my stuff and followed my stuff and went, he came to one of my events and he asked me if it would be all right at another event, a public event, he could bring some PhD students to do some research and to ask my audience some questions. I said, sure. And then they asked me to speak to the team there. And then the same guy said, have you thought about doing a PhD? And I went, that sounds fucking horrible. And then we kind of just had a chat and I went, well, how would that even work? What would that look like? And it wasn't something that I, for the last 10 years, was conspiring to do. But I just did some investigating and I thought, maybe. And I ended up applying. I thought I won't get accepted anyway because I don't have honours or masters. I have an undergrad in exercise science, but depending on what you've done, like me, without sounding weird, I've done a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
I've written 7 books and employed 500 people and, started the first personal training business in Australia. And so I had lots of time and runs on the board, I guess. And anyway, for whatever reason, they said yes. I went, oh, fuck. I went, really? Are you sure?
Yeah.
And it started there. And I'm intrigued with, look, truly, I am not an academic. I'm a pracademic. And the whole idea, like I truly did not really know what I was getting into. So my PhD is in neuropsychology. It is research-based. So you basically become a full-time researcher. That's literally what you are. You're a researcher. Yes, you're a PhD student, but you're looking at mountains of other science. You're figuring out what's already been done and not done. By the way, not a lot hasn't been done in the psychology space. And then you're trying to find a gap or a hole or a flaw in the science, and you're trying to bring something. Well, your mandate is to bring something new to the world. Like you can't do something that's been done. You won't get a PhD with that. You need to do something, a variation of something, an addition to something, a progression of something. And the first year was just very, very steep. It's still a steep learning curve, but yeah, you figure out how to research and how to read academic papers and how to understand, the language and what's required. You do for my course anyway, or for my program, 6-month mark, you go and you stand before a board and you do basically they assess you as to whether or not you should keep going. That's terrifying.
Wow.
And then you do what's called a confirmation at 1 year. Then you do a mid-candidature. Your PhD is called a candidature, so you're a PhD candidate. Then you do a mid-cand halfway through. And then the last one that you do is your final review, which I've got in a few months.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, you submit your thesis, but I have to write probably 3 academic articles. They need to get published and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely not my natural habitat, but I think that, and I'm digressing, but generally I think that one of the things that a lot of people do when they get older, and I don't mean old, I just mean 30 onwards, is they stop intentionally learning.
Yeah.
They don't learn, or, they might do something brief, but in terms, like, I think being a lifelong learner is just one of the smartest things that you can do. And whether or not it's incidental research that you're doing and note taking, or whether or not it's a TAFE course, or whether or not it's learning how to be a barista, or getting a Cert 3 in fitness, or doing a Ph.D. in neuropsychology, or anything in between, as long as your brain needs stimulation and training, and it needs a bit of discomfort. Just like your body needs to, you're not going to wake up at 50 and go, wow, I'm so fucking strong.
Yeah.
It ain't happening.
Yes.
But you can, if you do the things that are required to create a 50-year-old strong body.
Right.
Also, you're not going to wake up at 50 with a high performance brain, unless you're using your brain leading up to that in a way that produces, optimal cognitive function. There's a genetic component in there, which might be 20 or 30%, maybe, but maybe 70 to 80% of how well your brain works is really about what you're doing with it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in pursuing a PhD, because it's really hard, and I'd love to know, beyond just having that there and, for career and so forth, but it would be nice to know that I could look back on myself and go, yeah, I am someone who is capable of doing that. That's a nice feeling when I go to bed at night,
100%. Do you want me to tell you about what my research is? Because it's changed.
I would love to know. So for everyone listening at home, let's put our scientific caps on here, and we'll just do a couple of definitions first. So, Craig, if you will, my friend, neuropsychology first, as distinct from psychology.
Yeah. So neuropsychology is really just where you're kind of like, I'll keep it really fundamental. It's where you're still in the psychology space, but you're factoring in the brain, and often, tying what is happening in the brain and how that impacts how people function and operate and think. Whereas psychology is really just straight psych behavior, observing behavior, interpreting behavior, trying to understand the mind. What's interesting is here's a red herring. There's an argument that we don't have a mind. A mind is like a thing that we created, right? Well, thinking arises from the brain specifically, obviously, but the mind is really a construct that we invented to kind of understand the place, in inverted commas, where thinking happens. So if you get a brain injury, depending on the kind of injury that you get, that will really affect cognition, thinking, right? That will really affect it. And if you get a bad enough brain injury, your ability to think might be almost terminated, right? So, and it's not to, that's not to confuse anyone. I still talk about the mind, and the mind is really just a nice idea of the place that we think and we make decisions, we interpret data, we process the world around us, we tell stories. But really, as a thing, like an observable, touchable, literal thing, it doesn't really exist.
Yes.
So, but don't worry about it. I still talk about it all the time, because it kind of makes things understandable. But
I'm gonna have to call this podcast the Mate Podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you worry there?
The No Mind Podcast.
Yeah.
Guess what? We don't have a mind. Well, we kind of do. It's like, spirit, soul, mind. It's all in the same kind of, So my research is on a thing called meta perception, and specifically meta accuracy. So meta perception is kind of a higher level component, or a more specific component of self-awareness. So meta perception is your ability to understand the Tom experience for others. So the question at the core of meta perception is, what's it like being around me for them, or for him, or for her, right? And so And specifically, mine is on meta accuracy, how accurate your understanding of my experience of you is. Now, this sounds a bit double Dutch. So I'll chuck in some slightly sciencey terms that people might want to open the door on. If you want to do a little bit of kind of online sleuthing and you want to just like check out some stuff yourself. So there's a really interesting term, which is metacognition. Metacognition is just thinking about how you think. Metacognition is, what do I think? When I see that, why do I respond that way? When Tom says that, why do I get angry? Or why do I feel sad? Or when Tom did that thing, why did that piss me off? Or why did that make me happy? Like, what is that response? Why do I think that old people shouldn't go to university? Why do I think that? Why do I think that at this age, this person should dress a certain way?
Yeah.
Why do I believe that when I die, this will happen or that will happen? Is it possible that that's not true? Is that possible? Where did my beliefs come from? Are they my beliefs, or do I believe them because mum and dad believed them and they handed them down to me and I just put them on like an old cardigan and now I wear those beliefs around, whereas I never really actually chose them. I just grew up being indoctrinated by them and now they are, in inverted commas, mine. So this is all metacognitive, is thinking about, where do my beliefs come from? Where do my ideas come from? Is this thing that I believe, is it even true? Is this thing that I'm critical of actually wrong? Could I be wrong? Right? People don't, it's like ergo, the comment before, echo chambers and confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Like, one of the challenges for us is a lot of us have our identity intertwined with the thing that we believe. Now, if my identity is intertwined with a certain stance or thought or idea or philosophy or religion or ideology, then there's zero chance I'm going to be open to any other kind of truth. So, which makes me, in relation to that, unteachable.
Yes.
But I'm also going to tell you at the same time, I'm really open-minded. Right? So metacognition is thinking about thinking. There's another interesting term that you might want to explore, which is called theory of mind. Theory of mind is my ability to understand how Tom thinks, and my curiosity around how Tom thinks, my curiosity around Tom's version of right now. So why does it matter? Why does meta perception, theory of mind, and meta accuracy matter? It matters because, let's say, for example, Tom, you are terrible at understanding how other people think. And you're interviewing me, and what I'm about to say is not true. It's hypothetical, but you're interviewing me and I'm like, oh, this bloke is so fucking boring. Oh, and I'm like, and his questions are stupid and I don't want to be here, right? Let's imagine if that was, right? Now, if that was what I was thinking or feeling or experiencing, that I really was hating this and not enjoying you and couldn't wait to get off. If you had this level of perception, meta perception is understanding how I am experiencing you in the moment, you would probably change tack. You would probably go, you might have an awareness that this is not working, that he doesn't like me, or I'm annoying him, or this is not resonating. And so I'm going to change it up. I'm going to turn left or right to create. And why does it matter? Because the better that you understand the you experience for others, right, then the better you will connect, the quicker you'll develop rapport. You'll have a great conversation. You'll solve problems with other people quicker. You'll resolve conflict quicker. You'll be a better leader, a better teacher, a better coach, because you understand, for the 10 people in front of you or the 100 people or the one person, you understand what it's like being around you. Right? And so this really matters. So I created a scale called the Yes 40, which is measures meta perception and meta accuracy. So I'm working at getting that validated, which basically means giving it the big scientific tick as a legitimate tool in psychology for measurement. And yeah, just having a look at the other things in the space that are done, and how effective they are or aren't. But I think, because my main job in inverted commas is talking, and, now I'm talking to your audience and I'm talking to you, and 14 times a week I'm on my own shows talking to people, and 2 or 3 times a week I'm in a room talking to real 3-dimensional humans in a room. I can't coach people, and I have 3 people that work for me. And, so it's really important that I kind of get the Craig experience for others. Otherwise I'm guessing.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm going to create more disconnection than connection. Otherwise, I'm going to create more problems than solutions. And, a lot of leaders and managers and coaches and people in senior positions, they think, for example, they're giving somebody X and the person's getting Y, but they don't know it. So I could say to you, hey, Tom, I reckon you should do this and that. And like, this is pretty good, but I'd change that. And I think what I'm giving you is informed feedback back, and I'm helping you, and I'm trying to make you better, blah. That's my intention. Your experience is this guy is judging me, he's saying what I'm doing doesn't work. He's being critical of my current operating system, and he's giving me advice I didn't fucking ask for. Right? Now, you don't live in my intention, and I need to be fully aware that my intention will probably not be your experience. And it's the gap between my intention, my thinking, your experience, your thinking, that I need to understand. It's the gap that I need to understand.
Is it too premature to have a conversation around some of the research findings that you've been able to look through, or is it only post PhD recognition?
Look, I can tell you through my stuff and also other stuff that's already done.
Yeah.
So we know sociopaths are terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible at it.
I was thinking narcissists perhaps as well.
Yeah, narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, all in the same basket, which is
dark tetrahad, or whatever.
Which is depending on what research, but somewhere around 3 to 5% of the population. In other words, people who really lack empathy. They don't give a fuck, right? So they're not very good at it. People, this is not absolute, but this is kind of what I'm finding. People probably with a higher EQ generally will be better at that. The thing with psychology is that, especially psychological research, because it's all of the measurement is essentially subjective, self-reporting.
Yeah.
So I might, and that's not going to go away. Like with gravity, I get this pen, we drop it, we know it falls at terminal velocity 9.81 meters per second. It doesn't get faster. That's physics. That 9 times 9 is 81. You know that a kilogram equals 2.2 pounds. Like, there are things that we know that are absolute. So psychology is not that. And that's the messiness and the beautifulness of psych.
Right.
So you can get 10 me's on and they'll all go, yeah, maybe. That's why I think, academic arrogance is bad, and there's plenty of it. And you also have to realize that even people who've got 3 PhDs and are researchers and are scientists and are super clever, they're still human beings.
Sure.
And just like any other profession, there are people with incredible integrity and amazing ethics and kind of capacity to do good. And I'm not saying in science is full of bad people. It's not, but it's full of humans.
Right.
And, people want people want to produce certain outcomes. And so you realize that, well, a human creates the protocol, the study, a human does the research, a human interprets the research, and then a human writes the paper and shares and there's a lot of human stuff in there. It's not absolute. It's not, everything is up for interpretation, and even if we go back to something like the food pyramid, which used to be hard science, we now know that, and I won't bore you with the details behind that research, but that was really, really shitty research.
Yeah.
and it was cherry picked and it was funded by a certain organization.
Funded, yeah.
And so, and that's one of the things now is that science people don't want to say that a lot of science is funded by companies who want a particular outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not all scientific research is totally objective.
Yep.
That's not, and we need science, and I love science, and I've got an exercise science degree, and I'm doing a PhD in science. We've also got to be practical and go, just because somebody says to you, Tom, science tells us, that doesn't fucking mean it's true. Because science is wrong all the time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Science gets shit wrong all the time. And that's okay. Because nobody and no kind of protocol is infallible or perfect.
I suppose it's we could probably finish with this, but it comes back to that idea of the window of science and the fact that we've put science on a pedestal, in our reality, and like you said, it's given us so much as well, and it's also given us, Oppenheimer, who produced the bomb with the atomic bomb, exactly. So it's interesting. I mean, I where I find myself with science, so I love the idea, I love the mission of it, the objectivist approach to it, but then there's a part of me that just loves the experiential approach to the world. I'm very interested in the subjective reality of people's lives. And I feel sometimes that science, like even before, you learn this in psych, psych at uni is all about, the science of behavior. And I've really found working with people that there's so much more than what they do, and really when you, from a clinical context, they don't really care too much about what they do. That's where the symptom is. But coming to understand who they are and who they want to be and how they can integrate their lives is the wonderful gift of psychology. So, whilst I want to keep going down that road at uni, day one is still creating some resentment, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I don't think everybody should study that way. I think some people should, some shouldn't. It's like some people should build their own business, some shouldn't. It's not right or wrong. It's just, and it's like sometimes it's also about not just about this person or that person. It's about the time in that person's life.
Yes.
Things have a use by date. There was a time when me being a personal trainer, running hundreds of personal trainers and having multiple gyms and being out on the gym floor and training athletes and working with teams and making people strong and jacked and fit and healthy and, blah, 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 and talking about dumbbells and barbells and progressive overload, and micros and macros and, and fucking being a dickhead in the gym, all that. I mean, that was awesome. And then eventually it wasn't awesome. Then it was like, oh, and then it was, it's okay. And then I'm like, no, I don't want to do it.
Yes.
So it's not right or wrong. It's just, it depends on where you are at developmentally and your own journey. Like we are with my podcast, with the U Project, I'm 1,200 episodes in. And someone said to me the other day, how many will you do? I go, till I don't want to do it. That could be in a week. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I really love it. I love the fact that I get to talk to people like you, interesting, smart people. Every day I talk to interesting, smart people who in many ways are smarter than me, better than me. They've had experiences and they have insight and awareness and knowledge that I don't. I'm like, this is like a scam. I get paid for this. This is stupid. We have, we're fortunate now that after 1 million episodes with no sponsors, we're now really well sponsored and an actual business. And, we've partnered with Nova and all of those cool things. But I had just as much fun when I made zero.
Yep.
Because my payment is that I'm hanging out with people who drag me up. I'm getting to talk to people. Like, I interviewed the guy who started Netflix. I'm like,
oh, wow.
Am I talking to him? And I've got a guy on tomorrow called Professor Jeffrey Rediger, who's Harvard Medical School, who's like a world expert in mind-body healing, spontaneous healing, placebos. He's a researcher. He's a medical doctor. He's a psychiatrist. He got dragged kicking and screaming into that research because he thought it was bullshit. Like, I'm talking to literally some of the smartest people in the world.
Yeah.
That people I couldn't even get 5 minutes with, if not that I have this really good platform that opens doors. So I'm always grateful, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, Craig, I want to be respectful of your time, my friend, but I always love chatting to you, mate. Coming full circle, there's a bit of that optimism that's kind of stayed with me now and on the way up, which I think is really good. Tell me, obviously you've got the end of your PhD coming up. What else is on the agenda?
I want to start a cult, so I'm just not sure how I'm going to.
See how it goes.
Yeah, I really don't. Everyone, I'm being silly.
Yeah.
But if I did start a cult, I would call it a cult, so everyone was clear.
For everyone listening, Craig was smiling at the time that he said that. Just by the way.
Yeah, no, I'm fucking around. I don't want a cult. Yeah, look, just more of the same, mate. I'm building like a whole lot of online stuff at the moment. I have, like I said before, I have 3 amazing women who work for me who are all individually and collectively smarter than me. So we're building some online. We've already got online programs, but some online products, and I already do quite a bit of online stuff. But a bit of travel. I travel a lot. I do about 100 corporate gigs a year, and I've got an idea, which I'll tell you next time if there's a next time, about
definitely
some postdoctoral research that I might do. So, yeah, but also just loving what I'm doing and being grateful and looking after my parents who are 200 years old.
Yes. Yeah, fair enough. Well, look, Craig, it's always a pleasure, mate. And look, if you're ever up, we moved up to Gold Coast. We're up in Queensland now. So if you're ever up here, mate, and you got some time, I'd love to get caffeinated with you. If that's a drug of choice.
I'm very jealous.
It is nice. It's a balmy 22, I think, today.
It's annoying. It's a balmy. Do you know what? I'm not even joking. You can tell people if I'm lying.
18.6 it is here. What are you? 10. Oh, yeah. Hey, that's pretty good for Melbourne.
10. It's freaking 10.
Double digits.
Yeah. This is Hampton today. Hampton in Melbourne, everyone. Low of 5, top of 11. Oh, I can't wait till we hit 11.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to get my Speedos on.
Yeah, that's right.
Mate, it's great to chat to you.
I love it. Yeah, always a pleasure, Craig. Guys, thank you so much. And I'll speak to you next week. Bye for now.